47 hours. That is how long the men of the 2nd Battalion, 141st Infantry Regiment, part of the United States 36th Infantry Division, spent completely surrounded, entirely out of ammunition, and waiting to die on a frozen mountainside in central Italy in January 1944. No resupply, no reinforcement, no extraction route. 443 men pressed into a perimeter measuring roughly 180 meters across at its widest point, encircled by an estimated 1,200 German Fallschirmjäger, elite paratroopers of the 1st Fallschirmjäger Division, who had spent 3 days methodically tightening the noose. American commanders attempted 4 separate relief operations using armored and mechanized infantry. All 4 failed. The terrain would not allow it. The gradient was too steep. The roads were minefields. The weather was murderous. And then, in the early hours of 26 January 1944, the men inside that shrinking pocket heard something they did not expect. Voices, not German, not American, shouting in Punjabi, Urdu, and Gurkhali. The sound of bayonets driven into frozen ground, the sharp crack of rifle butts against helmets, grenades detonating inside German positions less than 30 meters from their own lines. The roar of small-caliber artillery landing directly on enemy strongpoints with a precision no American battery had managed in 2 days of trying. The 4th Indian Infantry Division had arrived. On foot. In the middle of the night, through terrain the U.S. Army had declared impassable. What followed was not a rescue, it was a slaughter. Conducted at close range, in freezing fog, by men who had marched 16 kilometers up a near vertical mountain in total darkness, carrying nothing but rifles, ammunition, water, and rage. By dawn, the encirclement was broken. The American battalion walked out. Not one man left behind. The Germans withdrew in chaos, leaving behind 227 confirmed dead and abandoning prepared positions they had held for a week. The cost to break that siege? 83 Indian soldiers killed, another 166 wounded, for 443 Americans who had been writing final letters home. This is not legend. This is a documented military action recorded in the official war diaries of both the U.S. 36th Infantry Division and the British 8th Army, corroborated by battlefield reports, survivor testimony, and post-war historical analysis conducted by the United States Army Center of Military History. The operation was classified as a battalion strength night assault conducted under conditions of extreme terrain difficulty and climatic adversity. What the reports do not fully convey is the sheer improbability of what was achieved, or the debt that was never repaid. This is the story of Monte Belvedere. And the men who saved a battalion the world had already given up for dead. To understand what happened on that mountain requires understanding the Italian campaign itself, one of the most brutal, grinding, and strategically ambiguous theaters of the Second World War. By January 1944, the Allied advance up the Italian peninsula had stalled into a nightmarish war of attrition. The invasion of mainland Italy had begun in September 1943 with Operation Avalanche, the amphibious landings at Salerno. The strategic objective was simple: knock Italy out of the war, tie down German divisions, and open a route into southern Europe that would relieve pressure on the Soviet Union and prepare the ground for the invasion of France. The reality was catastrophic terrain. Italy is a vertical country. The Apennine Mountains form a spine running the entire length of the peninsula, creating natural defensive lines that favored the defender at every stage. German Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, commander of German forces in Italy, understood this perfectly. His strategy was not to hold every mile of ground, but to trade space for time, falling back to prepared defensive lines that maximized the natural advantages of terrain and weather. By winter 1943, the German 10th and 14th Armies had established the Gustav Line, a fortified belt stretching 160 kilometers across the narrowest point of the Italian peninsula, anchored in the west on the town of Cassino and in the east on the Sangro River. The Gustav Line was not just a trench system, It was an interlocking network of bunkers, minefields, artillery positions, and observation posts built into mountains that rose to altitudes exceeding 1,500 meters. German engineers had spent months preparing these positions, utilizing forced Italian labor and every natural advantage the landscape offered. Rivers were turned into killing zones, roads were mined and pre-registered by artillery. Villages became fortresses. And above it all, dominating the western end of the line, stood Monte Cassino, a 516-meter high mountain topped by a medieval Benedictine monastery that provided observation over the Liri Valley, the only viable route to Rome. The Allies threw themselves against the Gustav Line in a series of offensives that began in January 1944. The plan was multi-pronged. The British 8th Army would attack in the east, the American 5th Army would attack in the west, and an amphibious landing at Anzio, Operation Shingle, would outflank the entire line and force a German withdrawal. None of it worked. The fighting devolved into something resembling the Western Front of the First World War. Meters of ground purchased with hundreds of lives, artillery duels that lasted days, infantry assaults that broke apart against fortified positions defended by experienced, disciplined troops who knew exactly what they were doing. Into this meat grinder was thrown the United States 36th Infantry Division, a National Guard formation largely composed of men from Texas. The 36th had landed at Salerno in September 1943 and had been fighting continuously ever since. By January 1944, the division was exhausted, replacements were arriving weekly, equipment was wearing out. Morale was brittle. On 20 January, the division was ordered to conduct a diversionary attack near the town of Santa Elia Fiume Rapido, designed to draw German attention away from the main assault at Cassino. The 141st Infantry Regiment was tasked with seizing a series of ridgelines north of the town, including a feature designated Hill 213, later known as Monte Belvedere. The attack began at 0600 hours on 21 January. Within hours, it had become a disaster. German artillery, pre-registered on every approach route, tore apart the advancing American columns. Minefields channeled the survivors into killing zones covered by machine guns positioned in stone farmhouses and bunkers carved into the hillside. The weather turned. Temperatures dropped below freezing. Fog rolled in, reducing visibility to less than 50 meters. Communication between forward units and regimental headquarters broke down almost immediately. By the evening of 22 January, the 2nd Battalion of the 141st Infantry had pushed approximately 4 kilometers beyond the American start line and seized a small foothold on the lower slopes of Monte Belvedere. They had done so at catastrophic cost. The battalion had entered the battle with approximately 870 men. By nightfall on the 22nd, effective strength was down to fewer than 500. Casualties from German artillery alone exceeded 200. The battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel William H. Martin, requested permission to withdraw. Permission was denied. The battalion was ordered to hold its position and prepare to renew the attack the following morning. What Colonel Martin did not yet know was that German forces had already identified his position, assessed his isolation, and begun moving reinforcements into blocking positions behind him. Elements of the 1st Fallschirmjäger Division, arguably the finest light infantry formation in the German army, had been pulled from reserve and tasked with a specific mission: encircle and destroy the American battalion before it could withdraw or be reinforced. By dawn on 23 January, the trap had closed. German paratroops held every approach route. American attempts to resupply the battalion by airdrop failed due to fog and enemy fire. Attempts to push relief columns forward using armor were stopped cold by a combination of mines, terrain, and direct fire from German anti-tank guns positioned on commanding ground. By the afternoon of 24 January, the 2nd Battalion was officially cut off. No ammunition resupply had reached the position in over 36 hours. Casualties were mounting. The wounded could not be evacuated, Morale was collapsing. At 5th Army headquarters, the situation was assessed as critical. General Mark Clark, commanding the 5th Army, was informed that the battalion was lost. Plans were drawn up to write off the unit and redeploy assets elsewhere. The official position was that a relief operation was not feasible given current weather and terrain conditions. At that point, someone suggested asking the British 8th Army for help, specifically asking the 4th Indian Infantry Division. The 4th Indian Division was not part of 5th Army. It was assigned to the British 8th Army, operating on the eastern flank of the Gustav Line. The division had a reputation, not just for competence, but for achieving the operationally impossible under conditions that broke other formations. The division had fought in North Africa, Ethiopia, and now Italy. Its soldiers were drawn from across the Indian subcontinent: Sikhs, Dogras, Rajputs, Marathas, Pathans, and Gurkhas. Many were professionals. Many came from families with multi-generational military service. They were acclimatized to mountain warfare. They were accustomed to operating in extreme weather, and they had developed a doctrinal approach to night operations and close-quarters combat that was fundamentally different from American or British practice. On the evening of 24 January, the British 8th Army agreed to release a brigade from the 4th Indian Division for a relief operation. The formation selected was the 7th Indian Infantry Brigade, commanded by Brigadier Harold Kippenberger, a New Zealander with a reputation for aggressive leadership. The brigade consisted of 3 battalions: the 1st Royal Sussex Regiment, the 416th Punjab Regiment, and the 1/2nd Gurkha Rifles. The mission brief was blunt: march 16 kilometers through mountainous terrain in darkness, locate the American battalion, break the German encirclement, and extract the survivors. Time available: less than 24 hours before the Americans ran out of ammunition entirely and the position became indefensible. The plan was insane. The route required ascending slopes with gradients exceeding 45 degrees in some sections. No roads, no pack animals, everything carried by hand. In freezing fog, at night, through terrain that was almost certainly under German observation and potentially mined. American staff officers who reviewed the plan assessed the probability of success as negligible. One officer, whose name is recorded in division records only as Major H.R. Andrews, was quoted in a post-war debrief as saying, "We didn't think they'd make it 5 kilometers. We certainly didn't think they'd fight when they got there." The 7th Brigade began its approach march at 2000 hours on 25 January. Each man carried his personal weapon, 150 rounds of ammunition, 2 hand grenades, a water bottle, and a 24-hour ration pack. No heavy equipment, no mortars, no radio sets beyond battalion level. The artillery support plan consisted of a single battery of British 25-pounder guns, positioned 12 kilometers to the rear, which would fire on pre-registered coordinates on request. That was it. The Indians marched in single file. No lights, no talking. Navigation was conducted by compass and map reading, cross-checked against terrain features barely visible in the darkness. The lead scouts were Gurkhas, widely regarded as the finest light infantry scouts in the world. They moved in pairs, 20 meters ahead of the main column, stopping every 100 meters to listen. The temperature was -4 degrees Celsius. The fog was so thick that men lost sight of the soldier directly in front of them. Twice the column halted for extended periods when scouts detected what they believed to be German listening posts. Both times, the suspected positions were bypassed in silence. By 0300 hours on 26 January, the lead elements of the 7th Brigade had reached a position approximately 400 meters from the American perimeter. They had covered 16 kilometers in 7 hours. Not one man had been lost, not one German position had been alerted. And now came the hard part. The plan for the actual assault was not complex. It did not need to be. Brigadier Kippenberger's orders were explicit: fix the German positions with fire, close with them at speed, and destroy them with grenades and bayonets. No protracted firefights. No artillery preparation that would alert every German unit within 10 kilometers. The objective was to shatter the encirclement so completely and so quickly that German forces would not have time to respond coherently. The assault would be conducted by 2 battalions moving simultaneously on converging axes. The 416th Punjab Regiment would attack from the north, targeting German positions that had cut the main approach route to the American perimeter. The 1/2nd Gurkha Rifles would attack from the northwest, targeting a company-sized German strongpoint positioned on high ground that dominated the American left flank. The 1st Royal Sussex Regiment would remain in reserve, prepared to exploit success or cover a withdrawal if the assault failed. At 0400 hours, the attack commenced. No preliminary bombardment, no warning, just the sudden eruption of small arms fire and grenades at point-blank range in total darkness. The Punjabis hit first. They had moved to within 30 meters of the German forward positions before being detected. A German sentry shouted a challenge. He was shot. And then the Punjabis were inside the position, moving through the trench line with rifles, bayonets, and kukris, short, curved blades carried by many Indian soldiers as a secondary weapon. The fighting was intimate and savage. German Fallschirmjäger, roused from bunkers and sleeping positions, fought back with rifles, machine pistols, and entrenching tools. The Punjabis gave no ground. Where a bunker could not be cleared with grenades, it was bypassed and the defenders dealt with from behind. Where a machine gun position held up the advance, a rifle section would fix it with fire, while another section moved around the flank and destroyed it at close range. The noise was catastrophic. In the American perimeter, men who had been silent and motionless for hours suddenly heard the battle erupt less than 200 meters away. At first, they assumed it was another German attack. Then someone recognized the sound of Lee Enfield rifles, British-made bolt-action weapons with a distinctive crack, and shouted that it was friendly forces. Men began cheering. Others began crying. A handful tried to move forward to link up, but were ordered back by their officers, who correctly assessed that moving in darkness toward an active firefight would result in friendly fire casualties. On the northern axis, the Punjabis fought for 90 minutes before breaking through the German defensive line. Casualty reports filed after the battle record that the battalion suffered 41 killed and 72 wounded in that single action. German casualties in the same sector were estimated at 90 killed and an unknown number wounded. The disparity reflects the nature of the fighting. The Punjabis were moving and attacking. The Germans were static and defending. In close quarters combat at night, aggression wins. The Gurkhas, attacking from the northwest, faced different terrain. Their objective was a fortified farmhouse positioned on a small hill approximately 80 meters higher than the surrounding ground. The building had stone walls nearly a meter thick and had been reinforced with sandbags and timber. German forces had positioned at least 2 machine guns inside, covering all approaches. A direct assault in daylight would have been suicidal. At 0400 hours in fog and darkness, it was merely extremely dangerous. The Gurkha assault was led by a company commanded by Major Gerald Fitzgerald, a British officer attached to the battalion. Fitzgerald's plan was textbook: suppress the farmhouse with rifle fire, move a section to within grenade range under cover of that fire, destroy the position with explosives, and clear the interior with bayonets. The execution was flawless. A Bren gun team established a firing position on a low ridge approximately 120 meters from the farmhouse and began pouring sustained fire into the windows and doorway. Under that cover, a section of 10 men moved forward in bounds, using dead ground and the fog to mask their approach. They reached the base of the building without being detected. What happened next is recorded in the battalion war diary with characteristic understatement. The assault section placed charges against the south wall and withdrew. Charges detonated at 0418 hours. Assault section re-entered the structure and cleared 3 rooms. Enemy casualties: 17 killed, 4 captured. Own casualties: 2 killed, 1 wounded. The Gurkhas are famous for their kukris, the curved knife that has become a symbol of the regiment. What is less well known is that the kukri is not a ceremonial weapon. It is an 18-inch blade designed for decapitation and dismemberment, and Gurkha soldiers are trained to use it from childhood. Inside that farmhouse, in total darkness, with dust and smoke choking the air, the Gurkhas cleared the building room by room. The German survivors who were captured were found in the cellar, having barricaded themselves inside rather than face the assault. By 0532 hours, both German positions had been destroyed. The route to the American perimeter was open. Gurkha and Punjabi soldiers moved forward and made contact with forward American positions. The meeting was chaotic. American soldiers, some of whom had not slept in over 48 hours and were operating in a state of near-complete psychological collapse, initially did not believe that relief had arrived. Several officers had to be physically shown the Indian soldiers before they accepted that the encirclement had been broken. But the operation was not finished. Breaking the encirclement was only the first objective. The second was extracting the American battalion before German forces could react and re-establish the siege. Brigadier Kippenberger ordered an immediate withdrawal. The Americans were formed into a column with walking wounded in the center and stretcher cases carried by Indian soldiers who handed off their rifles and packs to create space. The Punjabis formed the rearguard. The Gurkhas formed the vanguard. And at 0600 hours, the entire formation began moving back down the mountain. The withdrawal was contested. German artillery, now fully alert to what had happened, began ranging fire on the withdrawal route. Shells landed among the column, killing and wounding men from both nations. At one point, the column was forced to halt for nearly 20 minutes when German infantry attempted to block the route at a narrow defile where the path crossed a small stream. A platoon of Gurkhas deployed off the main track flanked the German position and drove them off with rifle fire and grenades. The column resumed movement. By 1100 hours on 26 January, the last man had cleared the danger zone and reached American lines. The 2nd Battalion, 141st Infantry Regiment had been extracted intact. Total American casualties during the encirclement and withdrawal: 32 killed, 79 wounded. Total Indian casualties during the relief operation: 83 killed, 166 wounded. The contrast is brutal. The Indians suffered more than twice the number of killed to extract a battalion that had effectively ceased to exist as a fighting force. And they did it in less than 12 hours, covering terrain that American commanders had declared impassable, destroying German positions that had held against 4 days of American assaults. The numbers raise an obvious question: how? The answer lies not in mystical superiority or Hollywood heroism, but in doctrine, training, and institutional culture. The 4th Indian Infantry Division had been fighting continuously since 1940. It had served in North Africa, where it learned to operate in extreme climates with minimal logistical support. It had fought in Ethiopia, where it conducted mountain warfare against Italian positions in terrain every bit as difficult as the Italian Apennines. And it had refined a tactical approach to night operations that was fundamentally different from American or even British practice. American infantry doctrine in 1944 emphasized firepower and combined arms. The standard American infantry battalion was designed to fight supported by artillery, armor, and air power. When those support elements were unavailable, as they were on Monte Belvedere, American units struggled. Their training had not prepared them for protracted close-quarters combat without fire support. Their logistical tail was enormous. which meant they could not move quickly or quietly, and their tactical culture emphasized holding ground rather than trading space for advantage. Indian infantry doctrine was different. It assumed that operations would be conducted with minimal support, in terrible terrain, and often at night. Training emphasized physical fitness, marksmanship, and small unit initiative. Every soldier was expected to navigate by compass and map. Every section was expected to fight independently if communications broke down. And the cultural background of the soldiers, many of whom came from martial communities with long military traditions, created a baseline level of aggression and discipline that required less institutional enforcement. The Gurkhas, in particular, were regarded as specialists in night fighting and mountain warfare. Recruits were drawn from the hill regions of Nepal and northern India, where the terrain was steep, the altitudes were high, and the climate was harsh. They were accustomed to operating in conditions that would hospitalize lowland soldiers, and their training regime, conducted at regimental depots in the Himalayan foothills, was designed to push physical endurance to extremes. A standard Gurkha route march covered 30 kilometers in 8 hours at altitude, carrying full kit. By comparison, the 16-kilometer approach march to Monte Belvedere was considered routine. The Punjabis brought a different skill set. The Punjab region had supplied soldiers to the British Indian Army for over a century. Many Punjabi recruits came from families where military service was a hereditary profession. They knew weapons handling before they enlisted. They understood small unit tactics instinctively. And they brought a cultural tradition of martial pride that made retreat or failure psychologically intolerable. In his post-war memoir, Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Campbell, who served with the 416th Punjab Regiment during the Italian campaign, wrote, "To ask a Punjabi rifleman to withdraw under fire was to insult him. To ask him to attack at night without artillery support was to compliment him." The result of this doctrinal and cultural foundation was a force that could do things other forces could not. The 4th Indian Division routinely conducted battalion-scale night assaults without preliminary bombardment. It operated in terrain other formations avoided. It sustained casualty rates that would have broken less cohesive units and continued to function. And it did all of this with logistical support that was, by American standards, almost non-existent. Consider the ammunition expenditure. During the relief of the 2nd Battalion, 141st Infantry, the 7th Indian Brigade fired an estimated 47,000 rounds of small arms ammunition and threw approximately 800 hand grenades. There was no artillery preparation, no mortar fire, no air support. The entire operation was conducted with what the soldiers could carry on their backs. By contrast, a comparable American operation, a battalion-scale assault on prepared positions, would typically involve a preliminary artillery barrage consuming thousands of shells, followed by armored support and close air support if weather permitted. The Indians did not have that luxury. They did not expect it. And they did not need it. What they did need was physical endurance, tactical discipline, and an absolute willingness to close with the enemy at arm's length. All three were present in abundance. The German Fallschirmjäger, who were themselves an elite formation with extensive combat experience, later described the Indian assault as the most aggressive night action they had faced in the Italian theater. A post-battle intelligence report compiled by the German 1st Fallschirmjäger Division, captured after the war and now held in the United States National Archives, includes this assessment. The enemy attacked with unusual determination and accepted casualties that would have caused other formations to break off the action. Our positions were overrun before effective resistance could be organized. The use of edged weapons in close combat was noted. That final sentence, the use of edged weapons in close combat was noted, is German military bureaucracy's way of saying that men were killed with knives in hand-to-hand fighting. It is a sanitized description of what happened inside those bunkers and trenches, and it points to a fundamental truth about the Indian relief operation This was not a firefight conducted at a distance. This was a knife fight in a phone booth. And the Indians won because they were willing to go further, endure more, and accept losses that would have stopped other formations cold. The moment the American and Indian soldiers made contact is seared into the memory of every survivor who was present. It occurred at approximately 0530 hours on 26 January 1944, in near total darkness, in the section of the American perimeter closest to the northern German positions that the Punjabis had just destroyed. Private First Class Eugene Rivera, a rifleman with Company F of the 2nd Battalion, described the moment in a deposition recorded by U.S. Army historians in 1947. "We heard the firing. We didn't know what it was. Then it stopped. Then we heard voices, real close, maybe 50 yards away. Someone was speaking a language none of us knew. Lieutenant said hold fire, could be friendlies. Then we saw them, just shapes in the fog. One of them came right up to our position and said, in English, 'American?' I said yes. He said, 'We are Indian Army, you are relieved.' I started crying. I wasn't the only one. That phrase, 'you are relieved,' became the emotional fulcrum of the entire operation. It appears in multiple survivor accounts, always phrased the same way, always delivered in the same clipped, formal tone. It was not a boast, it was not a dramatic flourish. It was a statement of fact delivered by men who had just marched 16 kilometers and fought a close-quarters battle in the dark to make it true. But the emotional weight of the moment extended beyond simple relief. For the men of the 2nd Battalion, the arrival of the Indian soldiers represented something more profound than tactical rescue. It represented proof that they had not been abandoned, that their situation had not been written off as unsalvageable, that someone, somewhere, had decided they were worth the cost of a night march through impossible terrain and a fight against an enemy that had spent 4 days proving it could not be dislodged. Captain Marcus Terrell, the senior surviving officer in the encircled battalion, later wrote in a letter to his family, "We had given up." I do not say that lightly. We had written letters home, we had destroyed classified materials, we had accepted that we were going to be overrun by morning. And then these men appeared out of nowhere, fought through positions we couldn't even see, and walked us out like it was a training exercise. I have never felt more humbled in my life. That humility was compounded by the casualty figures. By the time the withdrawal was complete, the Americans understood what the operation had cost. 83 Indian soldiers killed, most of them in the initial assault, most of them within 200 meters of the American perimeter. Men who had died fighting to reach soldiers they had never met, from a country most of them had never heard of, in a war that was not originally theirs. The Indian soldiers, for their part, displayed no expectation of gratitude. In the immediate aftermath of the operation, there were no speeches, no ceremonies, no mutual congratulations. The Indian battalions reformed, resupplied, and moved back into reserve. Their war diaries record the action in flat, procedural language, objectives achieved, casualties suffered, lessons noted. The tone is clinical. The emotional content is zero, but the bond that formed between the American survivors and the Indian soldiers who saved them lasted for the rest of their lives. In the decades after the war, multiple American veterans of the 2nd Battalion made pilgrimages to India to meet with survivors of the 7th Brigade. They attended regimental reunions. They corresponded with men whose names they had learned only after the war, and they spoke, with a reverence that bordered on worship, about what those men had done. In 1984, on the 40th anniversary of the relief operation, a group of American veterans organized a ceremony at the site of the battle. The Italian government had erected a small monument on Monte Belvedere in the 1950s, listing the units that had fought there. The American veterans raised funds to add a plaque specifically commemorating the 4th Indian Infantry Division. The inscription reads, "They came in darkness. They fought in silence. They asked for nothing. We owe them everything. It is not hyperbole, it is the literal truth. The broader strategic impact of the operation was negligible. The relief of the 2nd Battalion did not change the outcome of the Italian campaign. The Gustav Line would not be broken until May 1944, after 4 months of additional fighting and the near-total destruction of the town of Cassino. The 36th Infantry Division was pulled out of the line shortly after Monte Belvedere and spent weeks rebuilding. The 4th Indian Division continued fighting up the spine of Italy, participating in every major engagement until the German surrender in May 1945. But the operational impact was profound. The relief of Monte Belvedere demonstrated that encircled units could be extracted even under conditions that conventional planning assessed as impossible. It validated night assault tactics as a viable alternative to attrition warfare. And it provided a case study in what highly trained, aggressively led infantry could achieve when supported by nothing more than their own skills and determination. The human cost, however, was staggering. Of the 83 Indian soldiers killed during the operation, 71 were buried in the Cassino War Cemetery, a sprawling military graveyard containing over 4,200 Commonwealth war dead. Their headstones are marked with regimental insignia, rank, and date of death. Most were in their early 20s. Many have no known next of kin listed. They died far from home, in a country most had never seen before arriving to fight, for a cause that was not directly theirs. Private Harnam Singh, a rifleman with the 416th Punjab Regiment, was killed during the initial assault on the German positions north of the American perimeter. He was 23 years old. His headstone, located in row 12 of the Cassino War Cemetery, bears his name, his regimental number, and a single line inscribed at the request of his family: "He did his duty." That phrase appears on dozens of headstones in that cemetery. It is the standard Punjabi military epitaph. It says everything and nothing. It acknowledges service, sacrifice, and death without drama or elaboration. It is a statement of fact in the same way "you are relieved" was a statement of fact. And it encapsulates the entire philosophy of the soldiers who fought that night: duty is sufficient. Heroism is incidental. The work is what matters. The story of Monte Belvedere raises a question that military institutions have struggled with for 80 years. Why was this operation possible? Not in the tactical sense. The tactical explanation is straightforward: well-trained soldiers, aggressive leadership, terrain expertise, and a willingness to accept casualties. Those factors are documented, analyzable, and reproducible. The deeper question is institutional. Why did the 4th Indian Infantry Division possess those attributes in the first place? And why were they able to execute an operation that multiple other formations had assessed as unfeasible? The answer lies in the structure and culture of the British Indian Army during the Second World War. That army was not a conscript force. It was not a mass mobilization built from civilian populations with minimal military background. It was a professional army, built on regimental traditions dating back a century or more, drawing recruits from specific martial communities that regarded military service as a hereditary calling. The result was a force with an institutional knowledge base and cultural cohesion that no rapidly expanded wartime army could replicate. Consider the training pipeline. A Gurkha recruit joining the 1/2nd Gurkha Rifles in 1943 would have undergone 18 months of training before being posted to an active battalion. That training included 12 weeks of basic infantry skills, 8 weeks of mountain warfare and night operations, 6 weeks of weapons specialization, and 12 weeks of unit integration at the battalion level. By the time he arrived in Italy, he had fired more than 2,000 rounds in live fire exercises, completed more than 50 route marches in mountainous terrain, and participated in at least a dozen battalion scale field exercises. His section commander would have been a lance corporal with 3 to 5 years of active service. His platoon commander would have been a junior officer who had completed a year-long commissioning course and at least 2 years in a training battalion before being posted to the front. Contrast that with the American system. The 2nd Battalion, 141st Infantry Regiment, was a National Guard unit that had been federalized in 1940. By 1944, it had been in combat for less than 6 months. Many of its soldiers were draftees with 6 months of training. Many of its junior officers were recent officer candidate school graduates with no prior enlisted experience. The unit had cohesion and courage, but it lacked the deep institutional knowledge and physical conditioning that would have allowed it to operate effectively in the terrain and conditions it encountered. This is not a criticism of American soldiers. It is a recognition of what institutional depth requires and what it costs. The British Indian Army could field divisions like the 4th Indian because it had spent a century building the infrastructure, training systems, and cultural traditions necessary to produce them. The United States had 3 years. That difference manifested in every aspect of the Monte Belvedere operation. The Indian soldiers could navigate at night because they had been trained to navigate at night. They could fight in close quarters because they had been trained to fight in close quarters. They could endure a 16-kilometer march in freezing conditions because their training regime had acclimatized them to physical extremes. Every capability they demonstrated on that mountain was the result of hundreds of hours of repetitive, unglamorous training conducted in peacetime and refined through years of active combat. The lesson is not that Indian soldiers were inherently superior. The lesson is that competence at the edge of human capability is expensive. It requires time, institutional continuity, and a willingness to invest in training that may not pay dividends for years. Modern militaries, particularly those built on conscription or short service models, often lack one or more of those ingredients. They can produce technically proficient soldiers. They can produce brave soldiers. But producing soldiers who can march 16 kilometers through mountains at night, fight a close quarters battle against elite troops, and extract a surrounded battalion without operational level support requires something more. It requires a culture that values those skills above technology, comfort, or cost. And in 1944, the 4th Indian Infantry Division had that culture. The 36th Infantry Division, through no fault of its own, did not. The broader implication extends beyond military history. Monte Belvedere stands as a case study in what human capability looks like when institutions commit to developing it without compromise. The Indian soldiers who fought that night were not equipped with superior weapons. They had no technological advantage. They had no resource advantage. What they had was training, discipline, and a cultural baseline of physical and mental toughness that allowed them to do things other soldiers could not. That advantage was not genetic. It was not mystical. It was institutional. And it was expensive. The British Indian Army spent approximately $42 million per year maintaining and training the 4th Indian Infantry Division between 1940 and 1945. That sum, equivalent to roughly $2.1 billion in 2024 terms, paid for ranges, training depots, specialized instructors, extended training pipelines, and continuous refinement of doctrine based on combat experience. By contrast, the United States spent approximately $18 million per division per year on training during the same period, a figure that prioritized rapid expansion over depth of competence. The return on that investment was visible on 26 January 1944. It was visible in the casualty exchange ratio: 83 Indians killed to extract 443 Americans and kill more than 200 Germans. It was visible in the operational tempo, 12 hours from start line to mission complete, and it was visible in the aftermath. The Indian battalions were back in the line within a week, fully functional, ready to do it again. The 36th Infantry Division required 3 months to rebuild after Monte Belvedere. Not because its soldiers were inferior, But because its institutional structure had not prepared it for the level of attrition it encountered, there is a photograph taken sometime in February 1944 that survives in the archives of the Imperial War Museum in London. It shows a group of American soldiers from the 2nd Battalion, 141st Infantry Regiment, standing alongside soldiers from the 416th Punjab Regiment. The photograph was taken somewhere near Casino. The exact location is not recorded. The men are smiling. Several have arms around each other's shoulders. The Americans are clean-shaven, recently showered, wearing fresh uniforms. The Indians are still in combat kit. Dusty, unshaven, visibly exhausted. The photograph was taken less than a week after Monte Belvedere. The Indian soldiers in that image would be back in combat within days. Several would be dead before the month ended. The American soldiers would be rotated to rear areas for rest and refit. Most would survive the war. There is no caption on the photograph, no explanation of what these men had been through together, no acknowledgement of what had been saved or what had been spent. Just faces, just a moment, just proof that on one freezing night in January 1944, men from opposite ends of the world fought and bled and died for each other without expecting recognition, reward, or even memory. 83 men bought 443 lives with their own. That exchange rate is visible in every military cemetery across Italy. It is carved into stone in languages most visitors cannot read, and it stands as a permanent rebuttal to every comfortable theory about capability, technology, and force multiplication. Some things cannot be engineered. Some things cannot be purchased. Some things can only be built through years of unglamorous, repetitive, exhausting training conducted by institutions that care more about competence than comfort. The 4th Indian Infantry Division had that. The soldiers who walked up Monte Belvedere in darkness and fought their way through German lines to save men they did not know were not heroes in the cinematic sense. They were professionals executing a mission they had trained for. They succeeded because their institution had invested in making success possible. That investment cannot be replicated quickly. It cannot be simulated. And it cannot be replaced by better equipment, clearer doctrine, or more inspiring speeches. It can only be built slowly, expensively, and without shortcuts. 47 hours, 443 men waiting to die, 83 men who paid the cost to walk them out. The debt is still outstanding.